Hello, this is Ms. DB. In this video, I'm going to go over how to simplify roots. In this lesson, I'll be simplifying square roots. And one of the biggest problems is if you're typing, how do you make a square root? So if you go to Insert, and then Symbols, you can find a square root symbol. It's this one right here. You can then write the symbol and then put what you want to take the square root of it after it. It's a good idea to put parentheses around that. You can also make an equation. Those are really nice, but you might not want to mess with that. Let's see, because I made my window small, I didn't see everything, all the options, but there's a ton of options for inserting equations, and one of them is a radical. And if you don't need like a cubed root or a fourth root, you can just pick this one, and then this will be, this will really look like the square root is supposed to look. So that's an option too. Or you can, what I often do is just write SQRT, abbreviation for square root, and then put the square root after it. So there's several options. You can even just copy and paste. Like I have one symbol there. Once you get the symbol, you can copy and paste it as many times as you need. Equations, you can copy and paste too, and then change the inside part. Equations doesn't work on all versions of Word, but you should have the most up-to-date if you're using the one on the student desktop or the one that's on with your email, Outlook. So here I could get in here if I needed the square root of 50 instead, and I could change it to that. So there's different options. So there's also, of course, if you have I have a touch screen and a pen tool. So I'm going to use that to simplify these. The first three, you can use a calculator, write the decimal approximation. Nearest hundredth means 2 decimal places. If you're not sure how to round to the nearest hundredth, then write 3 or 4 decimal places. Okay, let's look at how to simplify a square root. What you want to do is think about the factors that equal 50. So 50 could be 5 times 10. It could be, of course, 50 times 1, but that doesn't help us. It could be 25 times 2. And you want to find a factor that is a perfect square. What's a perfect square? Perfect square is when you can take a number by itself. This number is the perfect square. So 2 times 2 equals 4, so 4 is a perfect square. 3 times 3 is 9, so 9 is a perfect square. 16 is a perfect square, 5 times 5, 6 times 6, you get the idea. So perfect squares, you can take the square root of them and you get a whole number. You should know all these, by the way. What am I up to? Go up to like 144 for 12 times 12. You should have these memorized. So if you take the square root of any of these numbers, you get a whole number, which is nice for simplifying. So now that we know that 25 is a perfect square, I want these two factors. So I'm going to rewrite the square root of 50 as the square root of 25 times the square root of 2. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I know what the square root of 25 is. The square root of 25 is 5. Just 5. Not the square root of 5, just 5. The square root of 2 cannot be simplified. So the square root of 50 simplified is 5 square root of 2. All right, square root of 12. You do the same thing. You think about the factors of 12. 6 times 2. Neither of those are perfect squares. 4 times 3. 4 is a perfect square. So you start by rewriting this as the square root of 4 times the square root of 3, and then you simplify the perfect squares. Let's look at one of these where you have to simplify, and then after that, you have to do more work. So if you can simplify the square root, you can do that first, or, is this the first one? Yeah, this is the first one of these. It might be easier to multiply first, and then see if you can simplify the square root. For example, there's a rule that says that if you're multiplying 2 square roots, you can multiply what's underneath and just put it underneath the square root sign. And you should be able to figure out what the square root of 100 is, because it's a perfect square. So that's not the answer. You have to finish this. let's look at something like 9 where there's a number in front. When there's a number in front, that does not get multiplied to the things on the inside. It would get multiplied to any other number in front, but there isn't one. So it's going to be 4 times the square root, and then you have to figure out 3 times 21. And then you simplify the square root. So this can be rewritten as the factors of 63, which is 9 times 7. And then only the square root of 9 can be simplified. So this is going to be a multiplication out here. We're going to be multiplying 4 times the square root of 9. The square root of 9 is 3. And then the square root of 7. So this would all become 12 square root of 7. This is number 9. So sometimes you will have a number in the front, but that does not get combined with the things on the inside. Number 11 is exactly the same as if you just had 4 square root of 5 times 4 square root of 5. So it's just like the last problem we did, except you'll multiply the 4 times 4, so you'll have 16, and then you'll have times the square root of 25. This one will not have a square root in the answer, because the square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is just going to be 5. So your answer will be whatever 4 times 4 is times 5. If it's a plus sign, then you simplify, but you don't combine unless they're the exact same square root. For example, let's look at 13. 13, the square root of 28, I could rewrite, do this over here. 28 is 4 times 7. So I can rewrite this as the square root of 4 times the square root of 7. And the square root of 4 we know is 2. So this is like terms. I have 2 square root of 7 plus 1 square root of 7. So this will be equal to 3 square root of 7. I think the rest are pretty much like that. Make sure you notice if there's a minus sign. And then the last one is Pythagorean's theorem. There is a problem just like this, or very similar to this, at the beginning of your textbook. So you should be looking back at that to see how to do it. Don't forget that when you square a square root, like let's say you have a square root of 10, and you square it, the answer then is just an integer, just a number. There's no square root on it anymore. And that's going to come up in this one because you're going to be squaring this leg in order to use the Pythagorean theorem. So this is a fun assignment. Just be careful simplifying your square roots. Do not use a calculator to square root to get a decimal approximation except for the first 3. If you need to check, what the square root of a perfect square is, you can do that. And don't use like an online calculator to simplify these for you. It's a good skill to have. It's not that difficult. And if you haven't learned it before, it's time you learn it. Have a great day. Thank you very much.